record on this computer. Shalom Aleichem, everybody. My name is Rabbi Joey, and you've reached what will be an abbreviated Midrash on Vayishlach this week, and we're very excited to bring it to you. Thank you so much for visiting with us. We're going to kick it off with the Torah blessing. Barku Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Habarak Le'elam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'karbanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Bless the Lord who is to be blessed.
Bless the Lord.
Bless the Lord is to be blessed forever and ever.
Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who chose us from all peoples and gave to us your Torah. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
Amen.
Amen. All right. So this Parsha starts in Genesis chapter 32 and opens with a fairly brief aliyah, about 9 verses. Would anybody like to kick us off?
I will, if it's a nice short one.
All right.
Okay. Yaakov sent messengers ahead of him to Esau, his brother, toward the land of Seir, the country of Edom, with these instructions. Here's what you are to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I have been living with Laban and have stayed until now. I have cattle, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants. I'm sending to tell you this to my lord in order to win your favor. The messengers returned to Yaakov saying, we went to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you with him and 400 men. Yaakov became greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people in flocks and cattle and camel with him into 2 groups, saying, if Esau comes to the one camp and attacks it, at least the camp that is left will escape. When Yaakov said, God of Abraham and God of my father Isaac, Adonai, who told me, return to your country and your kinsmen, and I will do you good. I am not worthy of all. I am not worthy of all the love and faithfulness you have shown your servant since I crossed the Jordan with only my staff. But now have come 2 camps. Please rescue me from my brother Esau. I'm afraid of him, afraid he'll come and attack me without regard for mothers or children. You said I will certainly do good to make your descendants as numerous as the grains of sand by the sea, which are as many as can't be counted.
Amen. And he did just that. That struck me this year, probably more than years past, that he says he went over with a staff and he came back as 2 encampments and all sorts of rich stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And how faithful God is to do that thing,
Yeah. He was afraid of his brother when he shouldn't have been,
Right.
I mean, coming with
I was kind of thinking about how many years it had been since the separation, and how long you probably had been afraid here. About what was it, over 20 years?
Yeah, at least 20.
I mean, to have that kind of separation and the fear all that time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing somebody's mad at you, you can only imagine how his imagination and reality would have been, bugging him about, when he sees me, he's gonna
kill me.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody want to do Aliyah 2? It's another not too terribly long one.
I'll do it.
All right.
Genesis chapter 32. So he lodged there on that night, and he took from what came into his hand a gift for his brother Esau, 200 she-goats and 20 he-goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 nursing camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 she-donkeys and 10 he-donkeys. And he gave into the hands of his servants each herd individually. And he said to his servants, pass on ahead of me and make a space between one herd and another herd. And he commanded the first one, saying, when my brother Esau meets you and asks you, saying, to whom do you belong, and where are you going, and for whom are these before you? You shall say, I belong to your servant Jacob. It is a gift sent to my master, to Esau. And behold, he himself is behind us. And he commanded also the second one, also the third one, also all those who follow the herds, saying, in this manner shall you speak to Esau when you meet him. And you shall say, and also behold, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he said, I will appease his anger with the gift that is going before me, and afterwards I will see his face. Perhaps he will favor me. So the gift passed on before him, and he lodged that night in the camp. And he arose during that night, and he took his 2 wives and his 2 maidservants and his 11 children, and he crossed the ford of the Yabok. And he took them and brought them across the stream, and he took across what was his. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. When he saw that he could not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip. And the socket of Jacob's hip became dislocated as he wrestled with him. And he, meaning the angel, said, let me go, for dawn is breaking. But he, Jacob, said, I will not let you go until you have blessed me. So he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, because you have commanding power with an angel of God and with men, and you have prevailed. And Jacob asked and said, now tell me your name. And he said, why is it that you ask my name? And he blessed him there.
Let's see. The word man is capitalized in that, at least in the New King James, which is what I'm typically reading out of. Let's see. But it is the word ish, which is Hebrew for man. Let's see here. And it says in, where am I at? Verse 28. Whoops. Sorry. In 28, it says, you have struggled, you will be called Israel because you have struggled with Elohim and with Enosh, with men, and has prevailed, Yakol. So let's see here. And that word struggle is actually Sarah in Hebrew, which means to contend, to have power, contend with, persist, exert oneself, persevere to contend with. And this is precisely why I named my son Israel, because I wanted to make sure that it was spoken over his life, all the days of his life, that he would never be able to get away from God, that at minimum he would be locked in contact with God all the days of his life. And if he's doing the right thing, then it'll be a blessing. And if he's doing the wrong thing, then he'll have to wrestle all night long to get where he's supposed to go.
I was wondering if when it says here, because he has shown your strength to both God and men, the word "and" right there. I'm wondering if that could be a different word. I'm not trying to change scripture. I'm just
No,
saying that little conjunction or whatever that call that right there.
let's
Uh,
see. That's 28 or 29, depending on your
right,
translation, right?
right.
Let's see. I'm in 28 by the New King James. Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel, for thou hast contended with God and with men. But the phrase here, let's see, Elohim. Give me a moment to find that in the context of the verse. Elohim, Va'am, Anashim. My Hebrew being rusty, I don't know if that word Va'am is means and, or if it's some sort of way to make a conjunction between those two other words. Let's see what find on that. And with uh, Va'am, Va'im means it's with God and with men, the way that it's written there in the original Hebrew.
Mhm.
My Bible has, like, after the word Israel has a little asterisk. Does yours have that? And it has at the bottom, Israel means God fights.
Hmm. I've heard it broken a few different ways, that it's to wrestle with God or to have dealings with God. I've heard somebody say it was a prince of God, but that seemed a little evangelistic. So yeah, it looks like there's a few different ways to um, actually break that down. But the idea here also that that if when is Jacob contended with God? We see earlier today he's contending with man. He's contending with his brother. A few days prior to this, he is contending with Lavan. When do we see Jacob contending with God except for right here? So is this not a confession and a mission on the part of the man that he's struggling with? That this is not a what some folks call Christophanies, or appearance of the Messiah in the Tanakh. So that's something we also have to look at ourselves to see about this.
I thought he might be contending for the faith.
Mm.
That's one thing I thought, because in the prayer he was talking about, you promised me this.
Right.
You promised, you contending for the faith, that what God had promised, he was also able to do it.
Right.
But wrestling and contending until he got that full assurance of heart,
Right.
and overcame the fear of what men could do to him. I don't know if that adds up the way y'all think about it or not, but that's how I put that together.
It definitely is.
Contending for the faith that he was praying about.
It strikes me that we're talking here about this contention, and in the prayer prior to this event happening, he prays to God, saying, invoking the name of both his grandfather and his father.
That's right.
But he does not.
You promised them.
Yeah, but he does not invoke. Does he not? I don't believe he invokes the name of God as his God, which my presumption is that is, and that he's just referring to the faithfulness of generations before him. But
Yeah.
it's almost like this contending is almost him coming to peace with the idea that, well, you promised me this, and you're truly true if you make this thing come to
Right.
pass. And if not, then I know that I'm out of line somewhere, or there's something is wrong in this equation.
So I'm not wrong to say this might be the idea of contending for the faith,
I think that's true.
because he had the promise. He knew he had the promise. He said it was God that told me to go back. It's God. So he's saying, I'm pressing
Mhm.
for this to the reality of it.
Right.
And you know, there is something to be said about that in
It's a
our
very bold
life.
prayer. It's a
Mhm.
bold prayer.
But you know, we can have the promise all day long. But you know, we got to press for the fulfillment of that, don't we?
Yeah, it's comforting to me because I see in myself Hashem has made promises and shown me things and carried me through so many situations
Mm,
that sometimes even in this time of COVID, I've just turned my wife when things get squirrely in the world and harrowing, and it seems like 1,000 by one side and 10,000 by the right hand. I just look to her and say, this is not to challenge God in any way, but has He brought us this far
to
and
leave.
blessed us so richly just to dump us on the side of the road?
Oh,
And if He has, then there's something we have done wrong. But as long as we check our own hearts, and walk in humility before God, and if we have messed up, to confess that thing and try and make teshuvah to repent to make it right, then Hashem is always faithful to do His part.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's certainly a chin check moment for Jacob here. Did anybody want to do Aliyah 3? I could certainly do it, or if anybody else wants to.
I don't. Let's see if I can get back to my place.
Okay. It's the very end of Genesis chapter 32. It's verse
Beginning at,
31.
I'm sorry, go, Joe, what is it?
Oh no, I was just going to say 32, 31 to the end of that chapter, and then 33, the first 5, verses of the next chapter.
Chapter 32, beginning 31, is that correct?
32, 31, yes ma'am.
And Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I saw an angel face to face, and my soul was saved. And the sun rose for him when he passed Peniel, and he was limping on his thigh. Therefore the children of Israel may not eat the displaced tendon, which is on the socket of the hip, until this day, for he touched the socket of Jacob's hip in the hip sinew. Jacob lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, Esau was coming, and with him were 400 men. So he divided the children with Leah and with Rachel and with the 2 maidservants. He placed the maidservants and their children first, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and her Joseph last. Continuing, and he went ahead of them and prostrated himself on the ground 7 times until his brother came close to his brother. And Esau ran toward him and embraced him, and he fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes and saw the women and the children, and he said, who are these to you? And he said, the children with whom God has favored your servant.
It's interesting to me how much Jacob is driving home the idea that he is, he said over and over and over again, that he is beneath. He's a servant to his brother. Or
Yeah. Why that, you think?
To me, it seems like he's trying to. The issue has not changed. That he received the blessing of the firstborn and all of those sorts of things, but I'm almost thinking he's trying to be like, let's not bring up the the negativity of the past. I don't take his humility in this moment as being self-serving so much, but it does seem a little over the top. But who is the master of all except the one who serves?
Mm-hmm.
Even though he had taken his birthright, uh, he's now showing him the respect of being the firstborn.
Right.
He's still keeping him, to me, He's had a big slice of humble pie while he's been gone for 20 years.
Right.
For sure.
His women and kids and everything, and Laban and everything. So I would think he's maybe learned a few things along the way and realizes that what he did was not right taken his birthright and is giving his brother the respect that was due him from the beginning. And it seems to me that the brother has had a same, same said piece of humble pie, because he's come with all these people, could wiped out this group of, um, you know, Jacob and his family, but he is, he's come and welcomed him and, kissed him, and, where he had at one time wanted to kill his brother.
Right.
Why would he come with with an army of 400 men? That said to me that he had weapons.
Right. Well, I wonder if he didn't go out with one thing in his heart and his heart changed over the course of the night. Or if it was, he just didn't know who this large group of people were. So you don't go out empty handed, or, you don't, you want to have a show of strength that somebody's about to try and enter your land if you don't know who they are.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it turned out that way. I just wouldn't want to see a lot of bloodshed right there.
No, that'd have been a bad scene.
And Jacob was expecting it.
Sorry?
I said Jacob was expecting the worst, because he separated his family. He sent an offering to him, peace offering, and then he had his family split up in groups in case, so he wouldn't, in case, there was a slaughter going on or something,
Right.
It was interesting how he divided them up, who he put in the front.
Right.
Yeah.
Thought that was quite interesting.
I thought it was good of him. Didn't he put the maid servants first and then Leah and then Rachel? Because I'd almost be like, is he going to put Leah's servant and then Leah and then Rachel's servant and then Rachel? But his priorities seem to be straight.
Yeah.
In this moment.
And let's not forget that Esau had made a grave error, horrible mistake. Showed and I'm sure that he probably was, although he was angry, I'm sure he had to bear his own guilt in this situation, and that elsewise he wouldn't, just run up to him like that and kissed him. I'm sure he was feeling it as well. I would hope.
They certainly seem to love his brother and have true affection for him. And a peace seems to have been made to some degree here. Of course, it'd kind of fall down a little bit on when the children of Israel are making their way back to Canaan after the Egyptian 400 and change years in Egypt. But still, God says not to completely cut off Esau and his people, because he didn't attack them. He just did not allow them to, the children of Esau, after 400 years, did not allow them to enter the land, to pass through it. So,
gosh, family relationships are always hard, though, aren't they?
Yeah. Especially in all these families that we're talking about, and far-flung and extensions, Did anybody have any thoughts on Aliyah 3 before we move to 4? Well, I will take that as a resounding no, and I'll read Aliyah 4 if y'all are good with that.
Okay.
Genesis chapter 33, verse 6 is where it begins. And the maidservants and their children drew near and prostrated themselves. And Leah and her children drew near and prostrated themselves. And after them, Joseph and Rachel drew near and prostrated themselves. And he said, what is to you the purpose of all this camp that I have met? And he said, to find favor in my master's eyes. But Esau said, I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have remain yours. Thereupon Jacob said, please know, if indeed I have found favor in your eyes, then you shall take my gift from my hand, because I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of an angel, and you have accepted me. Now take my gift, which has been brought to you, for God has favored me with it, and because I have everything. He prevailed upon him, and he took it. Thereupon he said, Travel, and we will go, and I will go alongside you. And he said to him, My master knows that the children are tender, and the flocks and the cattle which are raising their young depend upon me. And if they overdrive them one day, the flocks will die. Now let my master go ahead before his servant, and I will move at my own pace, according to the pace of the work that is before me, and in accordance with the pace of the children, until I come to my master to Seir. Thereupon Esau said, Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. But he said, Why do that? May I find favor in my master's eyes? So Esau returned on that day on his way to Seir, and Jacob traveled to Sukkot and built himself a house. And and for his cattle he made booths. Therefore he named the place Sukkot. And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. And when he came from Padan Aram, and he encamped before the city. And he brought the part, and he bought part of the field where he had pitched his tent from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 kesetas. There he erected an altar, and he named it God is the God of Israel. So it seems like instead of maybe this is that ultimate moment where he sees God has carried him through and delivered on his promise and got him all the way back home. And now it's not just the God of my grandfather, God of my father. He is my God as well in this moment.
It's such a sweet, scene there when everyone is showing honor.
Mm.
It's just so sweet, isn't it?
Mhm.
All the children, everybody showing honor. That's so sweet.
It is. Do y'all have any thoughts about why he shook off his brother and his brother's servants in the journey?
I don't know. I always thought, well, maybe that's where he was headed anyway. You know.
No, he means why did he shake off his brother's attempt to give him help? Right? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, because his
Why
brother's
do
like,
that?
right.
Why do that? And I found that strange and somewhat off-putting.
Right. Yeah, myself as well. I've never really understood that.
Of course, point is, he probably didn't want he was happy with the way things are going, but he probably didn't want any of Esau's people there
Right.
to view or spy, or he probably felt a discomfort about that. Why do that? No,
Right.
it's kind of like when you drive for an hour to see a relative, and when you're walking to the car and say, "Y'all come and go with us,"
Right.
well, thank you, but no, we won't. No, we're not going.
Right.
Good.
Next time, I'm walking out because I want to go. So it's probably that kind of scenario. But I probably would have felt discomfort too, like, oh, good.
Well, we see here that when he erected this altar, he said God and the God of Israel. He didn't say Esau. So he
True.
realizes that, even though it sounds like he's made amends with his brother, everything's going to be okay. But, he worshiped the God of Israel.
Right.
He and his brother, it didn't say,
So he knew who he was then. He had his identity straight.
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When God wrestled with him and Jacob said, I won't let you go until you bless me. And then he had to touch his hip to get him to let go of him. That changed his walk.
Right.
Sure
He
changed
wasn't
it.
going to ever walk the same again.
His halakha.
So his walk has changed. So even though, I guess it's kind of a lesson. We can make amends with people we may be on the outs with or whatever, but it shouldn't change our walk with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
know?
Cause you to deviate from the path that you had originally set.
Right.
Right.
Sometimes it will leave a mark on you, though. Sometimes during the wrestle to come to a place where you don't know if it's going to be reconciled or not, we'll leave a mark.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And with the blessing, you can go either way. Whatever they decide, you really can go with it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right.
God will fight for you. I'm telling you, He will.
Oh, absolutely.
And fight those who fight you.
And his, him walking with that walk for the rest of his life that way is a
Mhm.
constant reminder, you know,
It
of
makes you want to look for the tissue, brings tears to my eyes.
right. Yeah, this is a bit of a testimony moment for me. I was a musician my whole life, including being a musician for Hashem, serving in music ministries and that sort of thing. But then about 3 or 4 years ago, I developed arthritis in my hands, and my life is fine, but I just can't play. The only thing that I can't do, the only thing that I'm limited from doing now that causes discomfort is playing music. So, fretting instruments,
I'm
etc.
sorry.
And I wondered, Hashem, why is this thing? I really feel like he spoke to my heart and said, you have been you spent your entire life doing this, and now you have, 2, 3-year-old upstairs. It's time for you to focus on them. And if I hadn't taken the instrument out of your hand, you would have never given your full attention to that thing.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so ultimately, while I'm not, thrilled to bits about it, I am thankful that there was a lesson to learn there. I don't think that we should count necessarily every malady or negative thing that we experience as being, from God or whatever. I don't count arthritis in my hands as being from God, but
Yeah.
it developing taught me things. Being type 2 diabetic taught me things, made me a better person, made me a better dad. We had a big COVID scare about a month ago at our house. Thankfully, everybody was negative, but in those 5 days when we were all standing around looking, waiting on a long weekend, waiting to see for these test results to come back to see what was actually going on, I learned a ton about being a husband and a father and a minister. And so ultimately it was terrifying, but God carried us through it. But I don't want to lose the lessons that came from that difficult moment.
Yes.
So just because you're you may find yourself in the valley of the shadow of death, but Hashem is with you. And as long as you stick close to Him, the greatest growth comes in the valley and the dark places. That's where the greatest growth happens.
Well, that's, that is essentially what your mother and I have been thinking, that when most of us have had the vaccine and are able to go out and be among them again, we do not plan to do similarly what we did before. Obviously things have changed in almost a year
Right.
of sequester when a friend has not been into my house in 10 months,
Right.
other than my own children and grandchildren. A friend has not been here. You almost get to see some of the things you were doing to excess and missed the point of some more important things. So we had decided, even when we're able to do again, we will be doing differently.
Right.
You learn on that walk. I mean, it's been a hard walk for all of us these 10 months, I think.
It has.
But it's been uh, a learning situation, and he will teach us many, many things through this whole process if we will listen and then
Absolutely.
learn from that, instead of kicking against the
Oh,
goad,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
instead of being whining and kicking against the goad, accepting the fact that God has allowed this to happen and there's a reason that He did. It's
Mhm.
come upon the entire earth. It's not something that happened in Birmingham, Alabama. It's
Right.
come upon the entire earth. And you see the attitudes of people that, oh, it's just nothing. It's a lie.
I know.
No, the next door neighbor died, but it's a lie. And then you look at the people who've been contemplating and said, all right, Father, something's going on. We can't overcome this. This is one thing we can't kick away. It's
Right.
there. It's radical, and it's at the door. What do you want from and those are the people I think that God wanted to speak to. I think he's prophesied to the whole earth in this situation. Just like the prophets of old would prophesy on the mountain. Nobody heard them, but it was in the wind,
It was, yeah.
Right.
and was for a purpose. And I think he wanted his people to hear and know and to do. And
Right.
so our walk,
Mhm.
it may be somewhat halted going forward, because we may look at things a little differently, but it may be for his purpose that we do so. So, like you say, everything has that season of learning to it.
Agreed.
Wonderful. Good, good.
Mhm.
Agreed and agreed.
I agree with it.
I'll
Um,
play.
Thank you. Thank you. And I should like to read the next one because it's long.
Good. I was about to say, would somebody like to read this long, Eileen?
I'd like to. Genesis chapter 34, verse 1. Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to look out among the daughters of the land. And Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, and he took her, lay with her, and violated her. And his soul cleaved to Dinah, and the daughter of Jacob. He loved the girl and spoke to the girl's heart. And Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, take this girl for me as a wife. Jacob had heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field, and Jacob kept silent until they came home. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. And Jacob's son had come from the field when they heard, and the men were grieved, and they burned fiercely because he had committed a scandalous act in Israel to lie with a daughter of Jacob, and such ought not to be done. And Hamor spoke with him, saying, my son Shechem, his soul has a liking for your daughter. Please give her to him for a wife, and intermarry with us, and you shall give us your daughters, and you shall take our daughters for yourselves, and you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Remain, do business there, and settle there. And Shechem said to her father, and Shechem said to her father and to her brothers, may I find favor in your eyes. Whatever you tell me, I will give. Impose upon me a large marriage settlement and gifts, and I will give as much as you ask of me, but give me the girl for a wife. Thereupon Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with cunning, and they spoke, because after all he had defiled their sister Dinah. And they said to them, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to a man who has a foreskin, for that is a disgrace to us. But with this, however, we will consent to you, if you will be like us, that every male will be circumcised. Then we will give you our daughters, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you do not listen to us to be circumcised, we will take our daughter and go. Their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, the son of Hamor. And the young man did not delay to do the thing because he desired Jacob's daughter, and he was the most honored in all of his father's household. And Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city, and they spoke to the people of their city, saying, these men are peaceful with us, and they will dwell in the land and do business there. And the land, behold, it is spacious enough for them. We will take the daughters for ourselves as wives, and we will give them our daughters. However, only with this condition will the men consent to dwell with us, to become one people, by every male among us being circumcised, just as they are circumcised. They will not, then shall not their cattle, their property, and all their beasts be ours, but let us consent to them, and they will dwell with us. And all those coming out of the gate of the city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem. And every male, all who went out of the gate of his city became circumcised. Now it came to pass on the third day when they were in pain that Jacob's two sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brother, each took his sword, and they came upon the city with confidence, and they slew every male. And Hamor and his son Shechem they slew with the edge of the sword, and they took Dinah out of Shechem's house and left. Jacob's son came upon the slain and plundered the city that had defiled their sister, their flocks and their cattle and their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and whatever was in the field they took, and all their wealth and all their infants and their wives they captured and plundered, and all that was in the house. Thereupon Jacob said to Simeon and to Levi, "You have troubled me to discredit me among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and among the Perizzites, and I am few in number, and they will gather against me and attack me, and I and my household will be destroyed." And they said, "Shall he make our sister like a harlot?" And God said to Jacob, "Arise and go up to Bethel and abide there, and make there an altar to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." Thereupon Jacob said to his household and to all those who are with him, "Remove the deities of the foreign nations which are in your midst. Purify yourselves and change your clothes, and we will arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make an altar to the Lord, to the God who answered me on the day of my distress and was with me on the way that I went." And they gave Jacob all the deities of the nations that were in their possessions, and and the earrings that were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the terebinth that was near Shechem. And then they traveled, and the fear of God was upon the cities that were around them, so that they did not pursue Jacob's sons. And Jacob said to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, he and all the people who were with him, he built there an altar, and he called the place Bethel, El Bethel, for there God had been revealed to him when he had fled from before his brother Esau. And Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel, beneath the plain. So he named it Alon Bachuth. And God appeared again to Jacob when he came from Padan Aram, and he blessed him. God said to him, "Your name is Jacob. Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name." And he named him Israel. And God said to him, "I am the Almighty God. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a multitude of nations shall come into existence from you, and kings shall come forth from your loins."
Well,
That's a lot.
that's a lot and a lot going on.
Wow.
Right.
So,
Is this honor killing?
um, I think what they did was awful.
Yes.
Um, I don't know if that would be in the same sense that it's referred to today, but one, they used a thing of God to hurt somebody and ultimately to destroy an entire city. And then secondarily, now, if we're just going by the Torah, that man who laid with um,
Dina.
Shechem deserved what he got. He should not have been tricked into it by circumcision, but he, that's what's supposed to happen. You're not supposed to treat the daughters of Israel as they're not supposed to act as harlots. And it said he violated her. But then it also said that it was the city that violated her. So this violation came, but it came in the midst of the city. Now, does that mean that the city, as according to Torah, does that mean that the city heard her cry and did not act? Because if that's the case, then this may be an appropriate thing. Again, I question doing the circumcision thing to these people and to bring them down like that.
Well, it almost seems like, although had not said it, it seems like he was contrite for what
Shechem.
he'd done because he loved the girl and they expressed that and he wanted to marry her and he loved her. He made the mistake,
Right.
but he loved her. And Jacob was actually entering into this as a covenant with these people. And, you know, they were going to be one people. And from this desperate act was going to become something of peace because there's nothing to suggest that they were not truly honorable in wanting to make this right and to do the right thing. Because I think it was an honorable thing. In other words, I didn't like I didn't like what happened, and I think these two boys paid for it in the long run because something good could have come from it. I mean, do you know what I'm saying? In the long run, if they had become like them, they could have become. It could have shown, you know, us a picture of other people coming into our covenant.
Right.
And you know, but anyway, like I say, bottom line, I didn't like what happened, and I think it was a radical. And I think Jacob was against it, and he was frustrated in the situation, and God made him stand straight in the process. But I don't think he ever got over it, and I think he was angry with those boys.
Right. Well, and you look, I don't doubt the sincerity of the hearts of the city because they all agreed to be circumcised. But just because one is sincere doesn't mean they're not sincerely wrong. And I don't know that their sincerity wasn't backed up by bad motivations because it says, you know, if we circumcise and we'll intermarry with these people and all that they have will be ours. And Jacob wasn't supposed to intermarry with all those people and take their daughters for his sons, et cetera, et cetera. So there's probably a way to get out of this without destroying that whole city, maybe. Um,
Well, it says that the sons had come in and they were angry.
right,
And they were so that puts us in a position to know what their mindset was. They were going, to get
right,
this whole family, this whole
Well,
town. That just set the tone for violence.
well,
right.
didn't it say right before that that Jacob knew all this, but his sons were out and he was going to wait for them to come back. So he was going to let them deal with it, wasn't he?
It could be construed that way.
You know, I didn't think of it that way, but it could be.
I don't know whether why did he wait? I mean, couldn't he have said it in motion a different way from the beginning? I don't know, but he said he was going to wait for them to come back.
Right.
Mhm.
I don't know. This is a tough one.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a twist. You know what? But this is how you know that the Torah is true because this story is hard to understand.
Mhm.
Not everything that's hard to understand makes it true, but reading through this and all the twists and turns of this story, this sounds like a real thing. I've seen young people who did a thing they shouldn't, and then they try and make it good by maybe putting that boy and girl together, but then those things that doesn't turn out good and ends up in tragedy and heartbreak as well. So it's almost like a bad thing happened, but maybe Jacob's saying, well, maybe we can try and piece this thing back together again or turn it to the good or whatever. And I don't rubber stamp what the boys did by going in and killing all those people. I think that may be an overreach. Um, but and it almost makes me think that maybe all the boys were angry, but they were deciding not to take arms against their brothers. And so when they saw the opportunity arose that these men were all down, on the third day, they went in there and slew them all. That maybe that was just a rogue act on the part of these two brothers. Uh, I don't know. It's just,
Well, the fact that they said, let's, everybody has to be circumcised, and so they were going to be down. That's, the circumcision is a sign of the covenant.
absolutely.
It's not a marriage contract,
No.
like for this couple to get together and everything. It's a sign of the covenant of God, and that was tricking them,
Right.
saying that we'll be all alike and we can intermarry and everything now.
Well, they were saying they will be like us.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Uh-huh.
But it also said that Jacob spoke cunningly to them.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Jacob that spoke cunningly?
Was it? I remember.
Was it him or was it someone else?
Verse 13 says, Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with cunning, and they spoke because after all, he had defiled their sister Dinah.
Okay, so it
Dinah.
was the boys that did
The
that.
sons did, and it didn't say which sons.
Okay.
They
So
spoke. It sounds like they all spoke as one.
They were setting them up, but like Bridget said, they just cut the covenant.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had used that part of the covenant of God, a sign of the covenant to get these men in a weakened condition.
Right.
Well, and we have no writing here that says how God thought about it.
That was going to be my next question. It seemed so silent, didn't he?
Right.
Uh-huh.
He said
Well,
nothing.
they're using terminology, they will be like us. They are coming into the covenant. In other words, whosoever will may come. I just see it in that way. But at the very least, what could have happened is Jacob could have said, no, we'll be here in the land with you and share the land with you and we are our people, you are your people, we'll live in peace, but give us that boy. We're going to kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he would have been right to have said that, and they would have been right to have done it, unless the boy had won their hearts to say, I will go with them, I will be with them, but I want to marry her. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That would have happened too. But the point is, they should have handed over the boy, and the whole city should not have paid for that boy's sin.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a big mess.
It is. And it's so complicated. There's so many twists and turns in it.
To me, and now I'm going to just say this, sounds weird. To me, it feels like a very modern day, this is not a political statement, a political wrangling of a situation. Something has happened. Well, it demands a response. Well, let's compromise this, compromise that, try and make peace, try and put this together and try and meet all these things. But in the midst of doing all those back and forth, there ends up being a radicalized sector of the community that ends up acting like crazy people sometimes because of all the political wranglings that go on and the, behind the scenes deal making and stuff like that. And they just freak out, and this, to me, that's what this always reminds me of, is that it sounds like none of the sons were happy with it. It sounds like they all said, okay, we all join covenant with us. To me, I wonder if it's just a trick for the fact that it doesn't say, well, you're joining covenant with us. Well, conversion biblically is to be circumcised, to join yourself to the people of God, and to worship the God of Israel. This is the minimum for biblical conversion. And they're going to join themselves with those people, but it really sounds like it's going to be a 50-50 thing, intermarrying and not really one joining the other to be like. They're talking about circumcision, but I think that was almost maybe a Trojan horse, no puns intended. And then the idea that it doesn't say that, well, this is the God we worship. Y'all have to get rid of all your other gods and all this sort of thing, because it just doesn't seem like a real conversion process.
Well, they were arranging marriages, but that's what they were doing, arranged marriages too.
Right. So
it wasn't. It just wasn't right.
Yeah.
But well, if we follow what the Torah says in black and white situations, that will handle it.
Right.
The boy should have been handed over, and they would have done what Torah demanded.
Right.
And they didn't have to intermingle. They did not have to intermarry. They could have just lived in peace next to each other. But that's that people, and we are us, and gone on and experienced what they came there to experience to begin with. And that could have flourished, in the way. But you get involved with the wrong people and you do too much. And the girl should not have been there anyway. She should not have been in that town. There's many sermons in this thing, many things that we'll preach in this whole situation. She shouldn't have been there, but at the very least it happened. The boy should have been destroyed. Torah would have been satisfied and keep going, and don't involve yourself in the goings on of these pagan people. What are they doing with these deities in their camp anyway?
Right.
The camp of Israel. What's going on? Something's going awry if you stop and read the fine Hebrew.
Well, you're right. The first thing that we read in 34:1 is that she went to visit some young women who lived in the area. I mean, she got outside her camp, didn't she?
Right.
The safety zone.
Right. Yeah.
And for anybody that may be watching this after the fact at some point on YouTube or whatever, this is not, what we're talking about is not an attempt to victim blame. That's a thing that is talked about a lot in our society. I think the point that is being made, and I agree with this point, that bad company corrupts good character. Sometimes it's not victim blaming to say you got to be careful where you go and the company that you keep and that sort of thing, because bad things happen out there. And there's protection to be had. We just, have to live within those boundaries of protection. So anyways, for anybody that may see this in the future and have any concerns about that, I think we're leaning to the biblical principle of, living inside the covenant, living in the safe place, not allowing, bad character to corrupt good morals. So.
Right.
And living by the whole instead of just parts.
Right. Because we can see here, the wheels are already starting to come off. But Israel was already, some of the people of Israel are already in a bad place when all this happened. So if they've got some bad stuff happening, and I pray that very often. Sometimes if I'm struggling with something or whatever, I just pray, God, please don't let anything else happen right now, because I want to have one struggle at a time. If I've got a struggle, I don't want to be avalanched, because I know I just don't have the sometimes the personality or the wherewithal to handle multiple, please let everything else go smooth, because I can't deal too many things right now.
I don't think that's a bad prayer.
Yeah.
Right.
And to those that are listening out there, God understands and hears. He knows who we are. He knows our frailties. It's what we're trying to promote in saying that very thing that he said, is that we are able to go to God.
Right.
He is our Father. And Yeshua is our advocate who's interceding for us. And it's quite okay to say, I'm overcome in what I'm dealing with right this minute. Please, give us green lights in every other area of our
Right.
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with that. And God is so gracious to hear and to do. I say He is. He's very gracious, very good.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, I tell you what, I don't know about y'all, but I've reached my bedtime, and I know Miss Cynthia is on Eastern Standard Time now, so
Right.
it's an hour past the rest of us here in the old heart of
10, 20, it's 10:24.
Hmm?
It's
Yeah.
10:24.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. But I tell you what,
I'm willing to call it a night.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was a hard one to try to understand.
yeah, I feel like we chewed that one about as good as we could chew it up, and so we put it to you in the comment sections now. Thank you so much for visiting with us this week. And we, as we've jokingly, but maybe actually plan that next year on these midrashes, we may pick up where we left off since we didn't get to finish some of them. And we don't always do it because of time constraints. But thank you guys and gals so much for coming and visiting with us this week. And if you have any thoughts about anything, even if you think we're crazy people, we'd love to hear from you. You can hit us up in the comments section below. But if you're enjoying this, please press the subscribe button. And if you want to hit the bell for the notifications, we'll be glad to let you know when we have new content coming up. But thank you again so much for coming to Yoke of Messiah's Midrash of, let me make sure I say it right, Vayishlach for this year. And we bid you a farewell and a wonderful rest of the week. The Hashem be with you. And if you need to reach us, you can reach me directly at yokeofmessiah@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks so much for those of you who've sent such nice and kind things to us about the work that we're doing here. So blessings on you and yours, and hope you have a tremendous rest of the week. Shalom Aleichem.